Another podcast here for the Perception Evolution Project. Continuing on with what I have begun to dub as our Blue is the New White series.
I like that.
I'm here today with Brady Hale. I've had the pleasure of knowing Brady for the past 10 or 11 years now. I've seen his journey through the trades and fortunately have been able to be a part of it. And I thought he would be a fantastic guest to have on the show today to talk a little bit about the successes that he's seen. He's seen both sides of the coin, blue collar, white collar, and made a decision to pursue the blue collar work. And I put that in air quotes as I always do, blue collar. But that's who we're going to talk to today. So Brady, why don't you just introduce yourself and give us a little background of who you are and your current involvement in the trades.
Okay, yeah. As Josh said, I'm Brady Hale. I am a native Arizonan. I've grown up here. Arizona's home, and I love the trades here. I've seen a lot of work take place in them. My father built freeways, roadway signage and lighting and things of that nature, and provided for 6 kids and a stay-at-home mom as I was growing up. Now, we didn't live flashy by any means. There was a lot of cornflakes and sugar for breakfast, box cereals. We'd buy the big bags, but
I had Rice Krispies and sugar.
Exactly, right? As long as it had sugar and you were a kid, it didn't matter. But I always grew up with an appreciation for the hard-working mentality of that, as you call it, the blue-collar industry. Seen my brothers are all in it, my family's in it. And it was weird. Growing up, I always had the mouth and the ability to speak and the talking points. And my parents always thought I was going to be a doctor or a lawyer or someone smart. I tested really well in school. I just didn't like school. I would get there and I would learn the lesson in the first 10 minutes and then I'd be bored. So I was one of those kids that would cause problems because I'm talking to everybody else. I already know what you're talking about, teach. So it was one of those things where there was a lot of expectations, and I didn't know what the heck I was going to do when I was graduating high school. I graduated in 2003, so I was heavily involved during that time where there was a war going on. And right after September 11th, I had friends that had joined, and I had a bunch of other people that had joined. So I decided to explore it, and I went and took an ASVAB test just to check what my availabilities would be and what my skill sets were for the military. And unbeknownst to me, because I had never really done anything mechanic, like when I was in the garage helping my dad fix brakes, I was like, go get the wrench, and I would try and get the wrench and stay the heck out of his way, because I didn't know what else I was looking at. I didn't in my head at that time, didn't think I was a mechanic. I thought I was going to be a doctor or something else. And when I took the military ASVAB, I tested really well in the mechanics department. And so instead of having to just sign up as a reservist and go be a fueler for the designated industry that the Marine Corps has for Arizona, I was given the choice to get into either motor transport operators or mechanics, and I chose the mechanical route, just knowing that I did well in there, that I had the brains for it, I could understand that stuff. And so that was my first real experiences learning mechanical trades, and I learned wiring diagrams, and I learned everything else the military teaches you. But when I came back, I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I was preparing to go to war, and that never did end up happening. I was very fortunate, love my veterans that did, and appreciate their service. But I don't take that same sort of credit. My military time was very different. I drilled and did reserves. I worked for my dad with the freeway and roadway lighting and signage. Again, just kind of developing some of those trade sets. I loved being outside and being free. Like, the job was never a box where I felt like a caged animal. I was from site to site, and I was in the world, not contained in a box that looked out windows to see the world pass by. And that, to me, at a young age, was one of the best parts of that job, because I came home tired and dirty every day. But I loved being outside and being from job to job and from project to project. That was one of my favorite parts of it. Moving forward, I turned 21 and had friends going to college, and I tried many different colleges. Didn't thrive in the environment, butted heads with teachers, had a hard time focusing on the material because I just didn't see the application in my life when I was going through that stuff. So yeah, I decided to get out of working for my dad and try and do some college stuff and work restaurants, serving tables and bartending to try and do school. That stuff all kind of fell apart, but I did develop some sales skills and some opportunities with those jobs that I found to be useful later on as I went back to the trades. So long story short, on a sales job, I broke my leg and lost my ability to do a lot of manual labor. I had a 10-inch plate ran up my right leg, and I didn't have insurance. So at 22, I was broke, bankrupt, and basically hitting, like a Nintendo, just hitting the reset button on life. I had to do what I needed to do to get by, and so I went into the white-collar industry. I started with the University of Phoenix as an enrollment counselor, helping people sign up for school, which that was an interesting job.
So they hired you, somebody who didn't have schooling experience, to recruit people to go to school?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
just checking.
Yeah, that's exactly what that was. In case anyone's curious, that's what that was. I can't speak to what it is now, but I know what it was. I didn't like it. And back then, they held you to sales standards. And if you didn't enroll enough students in school, you would be demoted on your pay scale. Up to a 10% decrease, up to a 15% increase every 6 months based on the number of students you enrolled for school. I hated that. It was expensive. I was doing it. I worked there, so I got the schooling for free. Again, this was one of the other college experiences that I tried, was the online version. And as I went through my first 6 months of schooling with them, I couldn't believe what I was charging people for that experience. I got bad at my job because I stopped believing in it. Got my first demotion, did not like it. During that time, I got married, so I was trying to provide for a family. I knew I needed to keep working, and I explored a different opportunity in the white-collar industry, and I went and got a job with a financial institution at Wells Fargo. That was actually a really good job. They were another company, and I think everybody who's seen the news knows they had to kind of reorient some of their sales strategies. But as far as the job goes, it was really good. I liked the people I worked with, but financially, I was not getting ahead. I did really well at my job. I won concert tickets and special engagement trips through the company for excelling at offering products to customers and getting them to think that that was a good idea for them. But I just didn't like it for me. My body was falling apart. I still had broken screws in my ankle, and I needed the insurance and the time to get it fixed. And Wells provided that. I knew it was coming to an end, and I knew I needed to get healthy. And that was actually where you came in.
Oh, hello.
Yeah. So Josh was one of those friends I had back from that day, and we were both actually lucky enough that our wives liked each other.
Yeah, that's actually how we met.
Yeah, that's how guys can be friends with each other. As long as your wives get along, it's a lot easier for guys to be friends. But during that time, I'm working at Wells, and I'm watching you and your dad. At that time, you were constantly busy, constantly on the phone. We'd be trying to go out to dinner or go to watch a movie, and your work never seemed to end. And I was impressed at that point in time to kind of learn more, because I there was a difference in our lifestyles and our opportunities, and I wanted to know what that difference was and what created that difference. Why was it different? Because I knew I worked hard, and I knew I had a quote unquote good job, and I wore a shirt and tie to work every day. I thought I was on my way up. But I knew things were different on the other side, and I had to see what it was. So I made that decision. I got my ankle fixed, and shortly thereafter started with you at Windy City, out of your dad's garage. Yep. Wet behind the ears on everything mechanical. It had been years since I'd done mechanic work, and even the stuff I did with my dad's company was more shovels than it was screwdrivers. Well,
and you hadn't had any trade school experience before you started with me either. That didn't come till later.
Yeah, that was much later. That was after I made the decision to career this up, to make this a lifelong goal. There was no other than the Marines, I had electrical training on wiring diagrams for heavy equipment. And the nice thing with electrical is the concepts are all the same. It doesn't matter how big the voltage is. So that base understanding made learning what we do a lot easier. But it's not easy. I'm still in the industry. I still service commercial cooking equipment. I've expanded that knowledge through trade school. I went to the Refrigeration School and Institute in Phoenix and got universally certified on all the HVAC stuff.
Before we move on, I just want to stop you there real quick. Would you mind sharing how long you were in trade school and what it cost, or around the number that it cost?
Yeah. So I probably went to one of the more expensive trade schools on the West Coast. Arizona has a huge HVAC industry, and because of that, their fancy private HVAC school here prides itself really well on the information they provide. So my trade schooling was for a certification class, not a degree. They offer degree programs through the associate's degree. The degree program for the associate's degree was, again, this was a couple years ago, so prices may have changed, but I think it was $25,000 for the associate's degree in HVAC and mechanical services. My certification for the full universal refrigeration and HVAC was $16,000. You can do that in 6 months if you go full time, but if you do night school because you're providing for 2 kids and a wife and working, it takes about 9 months to finish that. And
a fraction of a college education.
Huge fraction.
Which averages now for a 4-year degree at a state school around $101,000.
Is it gone up that much?
Yeah.
Holy. Okay, so when I worked at University of Phoenix, it was around $60,000, and that was only 10 years ago. I have no idea how they've increased it that much, but that is amazing.
$101,000 with a 45% average.
Is that
dropout
out of state
rate.
Tuition?
No, that's in state.
Oh.
That's in state. Yeah, with a 45% dropout rate.
And what's crazy is that they are giving people loans for that price tag to get into jobs that don't exist and will never afford them the opportunity to pay it off.
That you cannot declare on bankruptcy.
No, oh no, those student loans will follow you till the day you die. You cannot get away from them, and if you choose to ignore them, they will destroy your financial opportunities in every other aspect, buying houses, getting credit cards, buying cars. They will send you to collections, and they will ding your credit, and they will drag you financially into a hole that is not easy to climb out of.
Yeah.
I had student loans, and I actually took out a small student loan to finish refrigeration school. This was where me and Josh split ways. His company was growing. We were still very small at that time. This was, what, 4 years ago?
Yeah,
Or
4 years ago.
Just
3 years ago. Yeah, I think 3 years ago, I think we still only had maybe
4 guys.
4 guys. Was it 4 guys?
Well, plus the office staff. So you,
Okay,
Miles,
so-
and your dad,
Yeah,
plus me.
So 7.
And even of the 4 guys we had on the street, it was like Corey was on his way out.
Yeah.
And it was me, Kevin, and Joe.
Right.
And Joe was kind of wanting to get into the office. So it was like me and Kevin, and then you hired the 2 HVAC guys.
Right. That's
Now,
right.
in my defense, I told Josh really early on that we should have started an HVAC division, like
He
really
did say
early
that.
on.
He did say that.
And I told him, I was like, I want to do it, but I didn't know how to do it.
Well, neither did I, and that's why I was like, no, I'm good fixing ovens.
He made the right decision hiring a qualified candidate who knew what he was doing to start an HVAC division, because that is not an easy thing. And once I learned that from school and then learning the trade in the field, I realized how much I didn't know. It's amazing what you think you know until you find out what you don't.
Oh, of course.
Mind-boggling. But so I decided at that point in time, Josh was still, we didn't have an HVAC company at Windy City, and I wanted to expand because I knew residential HVAC as well as the whole avenue of refrigeration in all areas of life, the commercial cooking equipment and everything was just, it was a huge market, and ovens and fryers is a very specific market. And so I was trying to open up my opportunities personally. So that was when I went to school. I set up for the night school, and I worked for you until I finished it, or right up until I finished it.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
At that point in time, I went to an HVAC company that did refrigeration and commercial cooking equipment because I knew they would value my experience on the hot side as well as provide me the opportunity to learn the cold side. In that job interview, I was able to not take a pay cut to learn a whole new trade in the refrigeration, as well as my employer was willing to pay back $5,000 of my student loan costs of the $15,000 program that I had signed up for, which was huge.
And keep in mind, this is with somebody. I mean, you were fresh out of trade school.
Oh, yeah.
Not even yet.
Not even yet.
Yeah,
I still
not
had
even yet.
I still had a couple weeks left.
Because and that's one of the whole reasons for this podcast is because of the skilled labor, skilled trades gap that we're seeing right now.
Right.
And so part of the success, supply and demand in this industry is being willing to do it and showing that you are taking the steps to become good at it.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily matter if you're good at it yet. You can find work if you want to be good at it.
Well, and I think that's the key too, because there's a lot of people that have heard the rumor that the trades are great. And so they go to trade school, but they're not set up yet mentally for what it actually takes to work in the trades in the field. And so there is no education that you can purchase that guarantees you success.
Right.
That is the only, there's no guarantee to success.
Right.
But it is all dependent on your effort because the work is there. Whereas you go get a business degree, there's only so many CEOs at a company. And so other than that, you're just working another cog in the facilities of it. There's only so many six-figure employees in a white-collar industry, and everybody else needs to push paper and make sure that the business keeps running. So I think the opportunity is just significantly different post-education for the blue-collar stuff. But you have to be willing to work. You have to, going to trade school and getting a certification that says you're capable of working does not mean that you're going to be good at it.
Right.
So you need to experience it. And sometimes getting certified is the best way to get a decent job because when you're hiring a guy that has zero experience, it is a Russian roulette crap shot whether that guy is actually going to like the field industry or not.
Yep. The field is way different than a classroom.
Way different than a classroom. So there's that aspect to the blue collar line of work. It's not about what you know, it's about how you do it. Because you're never gonna know everything, and you're gonna constantly learn because there's always new equipment, there's always changes to the equipment, redesigns in manufacturing, new regulations for the types of refrigerant that are allowed to be used. We work with dangerous materials that are flammable and explosive, so your knowledge has to come from experience. It's like a doctor, except we work on equipment. People's lives aren't in our hands, but people's livelihood is.
Yeah.
Because that equipment is necessary for them to make their business function, and they need us to fix it in order for them to continue to operate properly and keep their livelihood going.
Talk about job security.
Yeah. So it's a huge part of it. There's a lot of trust that goes in when you bring a technician in to work on something that's a vital piece to your business. And so when I look at it like a doctor, when you go to a doctor and you go to school, you're in school for 8 years, and then you have another 5 or 6 years where you have to follow other doctors around and learn how they do what you learned in the books before you're actually qualified to go do it for yourself. It's not any different with this stuff. All the certifications in the world, you need someone who knows how to do it to show you how to do it, and then you need experience doing it over and over again before you can consider yourself good.
Yep.
And I think that's something a lot of people miss along the way because when they're starting in the industry and they heard it was this great job where they could make $100,000 a year and then they go for an interview, they have no experience and the boss that's looking at them has no idea if they're capable, and then they get offended when they're offered $15 an hour.
Yep.
And I've seen it over and over again, but I've also seen guys go from $15 an hour to $20 an hour in 6 months, proving their worth on the street.
Yep.
Proving their worth in the field, because sitting at a table at an interview doesn't show the boss that you're capable of anything.
That's right. That's why I tell people, especially when I talk to techs, or techs that are soon to be that want to be in the industry,
Right.
And they ask me, well, what's the minimum I should take? So, okay, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Take anything that anyone's willing to give you.
Yeah,
if
what's
you
the
know,
maximum you want to learn?
Right, exactly. If you know, that you're good or that you want to be good, it doesn't matter where you start.
Right.
Because especially in this industry, let me clear something up. So, when I talk about the trades and what kind of successes and how much money can be made in the trades, it's all absolutely true. But like Brady said, it does not come without hard work and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. And
Commitment to the industry.
Commitment to the industry. It can take you anywhere that you want to go, but it certainly won't be easy to do. And and that's what I want to stress is that, when I do talk about the successes, I don't mean that they're instant successes. I mean that there are no 3% raises in this industry. It's not on the traditional system that everybody else follows that, okay, after this certain amount of time, you haven't gotten fired, so this is what your increase is going to be.
Right.
No, this is, if you show after a year that you're capable of producing and being a valuable member to a team, to a company, I mean, your worth is in your hands.
Right. It is. That is the fact, because there's a lot of opportunity. Your first job in the trades is not going to be your last job in the trades.
Right.
You don't want to be one of those guys that floats and just goes from company to company to company to just be a service technician. By all means, explore new opportunity, especially if it comes with new education, new learning, and new potential. But to just give up on a good opportunity with a company for 50 cents more because of impatience can set you back in the long run in some areas. Mm-hmm. So when you're a qualified technician and you're committed to the trades and you want to be a blue-collar tradesman for your life, you will learn that you set your value, and anyone who's interested in making money in this industry will give you your value if you can help their business make money. It's very, very simple in that regard.
Yep. And it's a growing industry.
Yes.
But a dying profession.
Yeah, which is the craziest part about it. I've watched two companies now, because I've been doing this for about 8 years, and I've only been with two companies during that time. I started with a hot side company, and then I moved to a cold side company. And then I looked back at my hot side company, and they were taking over the freaking world. And now I'm sitting there doing podcasts with them. But I, looking at that, I see the guys that have come in and moved on and come in and moved on and come in and moved on. And my other company that I am currently in the process of moving on from, they've brought in guys that are capable but not committed, and it kills me sometimes to be around that sort of mentality, because all they want to do is get the work done and go home. Mm-hmm. And no one's worried about making sure the work's going to be there again tomorrow, mm-hmm. or making sure that the long-term perception is gaining in value.
Yeah.
Some companies, especially when you're talking about smaller companies, they get stagnant because they've grown to their maximum capacity based on the structure they're operating under. Mm-hmm. Their walls, they haven't expanded their walls, and they've filled everything on the inside of them with as much as they can handle.
Yep.
And that creates a sort of complacency that, as just an employee, it's fine. But if you're looking for opportunity to continue your personal
your
growth,
advancement being limited.
Yeah. The ceiling gets set real easy because there's only one squad leader.
Right.
And if there's only one squad, then that leaves your growth limited to your street potential and nothing more.
Sure. Which is fine for some people if that's what they want.
And that's what I was going to say. There's a lot of people who can make $60,000 to $100,000 being a technician for a company, go home at the end of the day, not worry about the bills, not worry about the revenue, not worry about the profit margins. They made the money that they felt they were worth, and they did the work they were capable of, and they're completely happy. And I love those guys, because I'm going to need to hire a couple of them. But as a company, you don't want your leadership to reflect that. By all means, make room for those people, but but never limit them. If my future is being put into your hands, I want to trust that there is a future and that this isn't it. Not that I'm living in it right now and that's going to be it moving forward. But yeah, so I mean, I don't remember how we got all the way to there, but
It usually happens in these podcasts. It's like, hey, tell me your story. Where was I?
Yeah.
No, you know what? But I think that's a good segue because you mentioned that you've been at the other company for about 3 years now, and you made the decision to move on. Now, before we talk about what you're moving on to,
Right.
which is incredible, and we will definitely talk about that, but. I want to know, since moving from a white collar position at a financial institution like Wells Fargo into the trades for the last 8 years, what do you see in the trades that makes it valuable to you? Like, what do you enjoy about the trades that you couldn't get with what you were doing?
The way I look at the corporate, and by corporate I'm referring to the white collar corporate world, because corporate is everything. The blue collar world is full of corporate too, but as far as that corporate white collar world that I used to be a part of, the difference was the volatility and fragileness of the industry. And to elaborate on that a little bit, you can now order your hamburger through a computer and have a conveyor-styled robotic system make everything, and the job for the people is being narrowed and bottlenecked into there's only a few that need to run it and everything else is automated. With a lot of the white-collar jobs, other than like straight hard sales, there's very little in that industry that I don't see with the opportunity for it to just disappear. So you can master a craft in accounting or banking or something along those lines, and that industry may not have room for people because they automate. And so I see, I guess I just saw it as much more fragile. Like I can work at this for 10 years and it could all go away in a heartbeat. Especially so, for example, like University of Phoenix. I could be a great enrollment counselor and move up to leading other enrollment counselors, and then eventually be the team leader, the supervisor over 10 team leaders, whatever. But when you no longer need people to enroll students into school, what has that job done for me? Whereas the whole world could fall apart tomorrow and someone is still gonna need someone who knows how to fix it and knows how to get it right to come out and take care of them. So I didn't care if World War III happened and we went back to the Black Ages, because knowing industrial skill sets is invaluable regardless of the economy. No matter what the dollar does or what the country does or what anything happens, you will never not be able to provide for yourself having industrial skill sets. Having the ability to fix something will never not be of worth, regardless of what the currency is at the time. So that's my biggest thing, I think, was the security and the self-reliance that it provides. I have the opportunity to rely on myself and not something else that could be taken from me. Now, fall off a ladder, break my legs tomorrow, and everything could change. But
right.
But the knowledge won't go away. And if I had to resort to a role of teaching other people to do it because of physical limitations, the skills don't leave my brain. So there's not a way to not, like, you'll always have a way to pursue money and providing for yourself.
Yep. That makes sense. And couple that with a little bit of determination and ambition, and you got yourself a pretty good gig.
Right.
Which is a good segue into now what you're doing after you're leaving the company that you're currently with.
Yeah. So when I started working with Josh back in the day, I've always been a little ambitious, overly so sometimes. Might bite off more than I can chew from time to time. I always find a way to get it down though.
It's the only way to know how much you can chew.
Right. I test your limits. Always test your limits. Know where the boundary is. But but I told him that I wanted to be a bigger part of it, and in pursuing it, I learned that I wanted to do it for myself. I didn't want to quit on my friend. We were building something back then, and I wanted to see that through. I'd given you guys a commitment of 3 to 5 years when I started working with you. You were offering me the opportunity to learn a new skill set. I knew the value even then, before I'd mastered any of it. I knew the value of it, and I wanted to see my commitment through. But I always had this itch of being independent and self-reliant. I didn't care if it was under the umbrella of a larger structure, but I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to see, again, I wanted to test my limits and see what I could grow, what I could create. That's a good word. So I'm gonna sidetrack just a little bit onto the creative process. Creating your future and not letting your circumstances dictate what tomorrow will be is everybody's gift in this world, and very few people are taught to look for it. It does not matter where you're coming from, what you know, what family you were born into. Every day, everybody has to make choices that create their environment. And if you're unsatisfied with any single aspect of your life, the only person who can change that is you by the choices you make. You may not be able to change it overnight, but the life you create for yourself is 100% in your control. You cannot create a yacht with a boat and you know what I mean? Like you can't create that by just thinking it, but you can focus on what you want and create it one step at a time. So depending on how hard you're willing to work, you can go from being a service technician making $15 an hour to having a yacht and a boat and a helicopter. The pathway is there. It's just the staircase. How far are you willing to
tribulations.
I know the road that I take off onto will lead to New York, but when I start on that road, I can't see New York. I just have to know that if I follow the directions in the map, it's already been mapped out. All I have to do is follow the directions and I can get to my end destination. I may have a blowout. I may have a flat tire. That doesn't mean I can't get to New York. That's just the next obstacle to overcome. So back to where we started with what I'm doing next. I wanted to create a self-reliant, self-sustaining enterprise that I could run and grow. I knew I had to master the crafts. You can't be a service company and not know how to do service. So unless you have a lot of money, like if you want to buy a bunch of people that know how to do it, and I say buy people, but you all know what I mean. If you want to hire a bunch of employees and drop hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, you can own a service company without ever working in the field. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be a self-made man, you have to know what you're doing. And if you don't, you have to learn it first. So I put in the 8 years, which I consider my schooling. That's my real schooling, was the field service work, working for other people, learning how they ran their businesses. People aren't just going to open their books to you and show you. You have to pay attention. You have to listen. You have to hear the conversations going on around you and see the things develop around you to understand what's taking place. Because your job and what you're hired to do is not to learn how to run a business. Your job is to go be a service technician. But if you're paying attention, you can learn everything while you learn to be a service technician. So I'm in the process of launching a multi-licensed company with my brother called Hale Brothers Services. He's spent years in the trades as well as a general contractor and project manager. So from the house, we can pour a foundation and re-roof it and lay new tile. And I don't cut granite, but I know lots of people that do, and I can make sure that they get it cut for you properly. So he brings the general contracting to it, and I bring the service to it, and we are partnering up to change our family's history. I told you the story. I would segue.
That's all right.
I told you the story. My family moved to Arizona in either the 1870s or the 1880s. Horse wagons, fire stoves, wood houses, the whole 9 yards, dirt floors.
Uh-huh.
on the Hale side of my family, came from England, traveled across the United States, took decades, possibly 2 generations. I haven't done all the specific research, but I know they landed in Arizona from New Mexico right around that time to develop a 500-acre homestead off of the Little Colorado for farming. 3 years now, when they left England, they turned away from the Church of England and their family. My family was always religious ties, and they didn't like not having religious freedom in England. So that was what brought them to America in the first place. But they were used to wealth and money. They came from that in England, and they traveled. It wasn't cheap to buy a wagon and oxen and travel to the West. It took a leap of faith. And they came out to settle a 500-acre homestead, which they lost 3 years into it. My great, I think it's 2 or 3, he was murdered. And it was kind of tragic. Christmas Eve, his wife and their kids were unable to maintain the homestead, and they lost it. And the people who own it now own much of Greer, and Greer's a beautiful spot of Arizona. Like, I think about what my family would be if we had maintained that 500-acre homestead, if they had achieved their goal of creating that self-sustaining reliance that they were trying to find for themselves when they made that initial journey. But instead, my family history grew up dirt floor poor. They grew up in the community on other people's land, picking cotton, picking farms, running other people's crops, doing the work for these other landowners who had managed to keep their homesteads. And when my grandpa, it was when I moved up to Pine Top with Wells Fargo as a banker that I learned more of my family history, and my grandpa took me around through the area where we had originally settled up there. It hit me like a ton of bricks what that did to our family tree and how much it changed the future for all of our generations that had come since. And not that there was anything wrong with being middle class, not that there was anything wrong with working jobs. I've got family that works for the State Department, FBI. My dad does construction and project management. My sister does mortgages. We all have perfectly fine, independent, self-sustaining lives. But I think about that wealth, that land, that opportunity that was taken and shifted the course of our family. And I want to do what I can to kind of restore it. And that's where I think in this modern era, enterprise and entrepreneurship is the key. So ever since I learned that story, I wanted to rebuild our family tree and kind of shift the course. So for me, starting this business and this enterprise wasn't about being my own boss or being able to not work as hard or whatever, because anyone who thinks that you don't work hard running your own business, you're crazy.
Oh, yeah.
But it was about restoring that luster. I want to give my kids the opportunity that I feel like that you had. I saw what you were able to do with an opportunity that was presented to you, and it could have gone either way. It was your decision, but that opportunity for my kids was what I wanted to create. I don't want them to have to go to college in order to be able to find a good job, because that's the only path to it.
Right.
That's what I was taught. After my dad didn't know what the family was like 200 years ago. He didn't understand wealth. He just understood. It's like that rich dad, poor dad. Find a good job, work it hard, show up early every day, and you'll be taken care of. But as I've seen my grandparents age and pass on, they're not taken care of. It's hard if you don't create a nest egg for yourself later on in life. It's very hard. And relying on other people can be extremely difficult. And I just don't want to leave my kids in that same vein, in that same line. So that was the motivation, is family. And that is always my motivation. If you don't...
That's a hell of a why. I gotta say, most people would just say, yeah, I want a boat. Right. But I mean, to shift your entire family tree, I mean, it's incredible. Don't get me wrong. I think that's probably the single best and most specific reasoning I've heard behind, wanting to get into entrepreneurship.
Right.
But I think it's remarkable because it's going back so far. And I mean,
and hopefully forward so far.
Right.
Like, that's the key.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. But I mean, you're moving mountains, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Trying.
And it's just incredible. And I think people out there would be inspired by it.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw this out there. God moves my mountains. I just put my faith in him. I've been through some things, and I've had some, like I said, that breaking of the leg and all the different resets I've had in my life. Nothing happens by accident, but it's all a choice. And I think that free will is that biggest key that we were given, that biggest gift of creative power that we were given. If I don't know much about God because I've never met him personally, but if he is a creator and we were created in his image, then creation is the key. And being able to create your own life is the one true gift we're given here on this earth. You don't know how long you've got, and you don't know what's going to happen next, but the choices that you make are the key to your creative power. You can play video games, or you can read. You can learn new material, or you can go party and drinking with your friends. It is a choice every single day that creates your future.
100%.
So
tell me this. One of my things is creating
right.
your own definition of what success means. And like you said, there's not one path to it. It's not college or bust.
Right.
That's not how this works, and that's not how it should be taught. And, we shouldn't be pushed into something that's somebody else's definition of what it means.
Right.
So with where you're at and where you're going, what is your definition of success, and how are the trades leading you down that path?
Okay, that's a good question. I've never taken a lot of time to think about what I defined success as. Because some days I wake up and success is making it home safely. But if I was putting a definition on what my end goal is for this next phase of my life and what I would consider it to be a success as, providing my children with options and opportunities that aren't limited by my financial resources. If my kid wants to take dance 5 days a week, I don't want my income to be the limitation on that decision for my children. If my kid wants to go to college to be a doctor, I don't want my income to be a limitation on what school he can learn to be a doctor at. So for me, it's financial freedom. That is success to me, is you have to be responsible with money. And as you learn responsibility with money, God will give you more opportunity to handle his resources. I love Dave Ramsey. I'm a huge Dave Ramsey proponent. I'm not perfect at it by any means, but I do love his philosophy. And so success for me would be that opportunity for my children to not be limited by my financial resources. I'm going to have to sacrifice some time with them, and I pray that they will understand why, but I don't want their limitations to be restricted by my ability to earn money.
That's a good answer. And I think it's just fair to say that as long as you communicate and explain to them what you're doing and why you're doing it, they'll never, ever resent or, look down on the family because of it. You know what I'm saying? It's about instilling those values. And, thank God for, my dad instilling those values into me, because it's true. Like he worked a lot, and as far back as I can remember, no matter what industry he was in at the time, he just worked.
Right.
But, did it suck not seeing him growing up a lot? Sure, yeah, it did. But once I was able to reach an age where I could understand why, it taught me so much more at that time than it would have if he worked a 9 to 5 every single day.
The example he set was much more important than the words he could have spoken.
Exactly.
Yeah. I kind of lost my train of thought for a second, but I try and teach my kids that the most important tool they have in life is choice. And so when I make a choice, I try and explain to them. They're young. It's 6 and 3. So hey, you chose to sneak in my room and take candy out of the closet. We regulate your candy intake because my responsibility as a father is to not let you eat sugar till you puke. Like, that's my job. And if you try and sneak around it, then my responsibility is to show you that your choice has a consequence. Your choice. I'm not mean for providing the consequence. I have to. That's my job. But your choice was the only reason we're in this situation. Mm-hmm. And so that's my method for parenting is choice philosophy. I can't make my kids do anything, and the world's changing so much where you can barely discipline them. But if you can educate them about the power of choice, I think that is the most powerful education lesson they can get. Choice with money, choice with school, choice with friends, mm-hmm. choice with how they spend their time. It all starts on, there's an age of accountability. And so at the beginning, we're just trying to teach about, hey, if you don't put your toys away, you're not going to be allowed to play with these toys for a week. That's a choice you made. Now it's gone. But always referring it back to their responsibility to make good choices and not my responsibility to make them make good choices, I think is the key to that parenting that I try with them. Because hopefully they'll understand why I made my choices to work and build this company and to do this industry and to do what I did. If I'm not there, I haven't missed a dance recital yet, but if I miss something, I hope that they'll understand why the choice was made.
Of course. I think that's a great definition of success. I think it's honorable. You know what I'm saying? Because it shows that you're not only doing this for the previous generations, you're doing it for the future generations as well. So, anyway, we should probably wrap up. But why don't you tell?
Have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, a little bit. But why don't you tell people how they can get a hold of you? When you start?
Yeah. Technically, you can't yet.
Right. Technically, you can't yet.
I am finishing and launching Hale Brothers Services on February 15th. That will be my last day of working for somebody else, hopefully for the rest of my life. At that point in time, the people I work for will be my family, and I work on what I want to work for them so that I can provide for them. But February 15th, mid-February, I'm starting the launch. Hale Brothers Services will have a Facebook page. We're working on the website. There's a phone number. I'm not even going to bother dropping it. I might leave it in the comments later. But for now,
I'll go back and post it once February 15th comes and goes.
For now, there's just the contracting side of it, the remodels, the kitchens, the service industry's about 4 weeks away from official launch date. But yeah, if you need anything inspected, residentially or commercially, between what my brother knows and what I know, whether it's your house, your kitchen, or your business, we hope to be able to fix it. Lighting, door, framing, flooring, surfacing, roofing, and all of the equipment that goes into it, as well as the all-wonderful HVAC.
Awesome. Well, Brady, thanks so much for coming by today and spending some time telling people why you love the trades.
No, I appreciate the opportunity, man. One of the best examples I've had is this guy, and to be in his office right now and doing this versus where we were 10 years ago barbecuing brats out at your apartment complex.
Well, I got phone calls telling me to leave my house to go fix a fryer. I'll be back.
I'll never forget his piercings.
No, just kidding. They weren't all bad.
That's true. No, but thank you again for this opportunity.
No, thank you, and appreciate it again.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys.
See ya.